Hello kids, welcome to a new natural science class, okay? We are going to work today into simple machines. 1. Levers. Levers means palancas, okay? In the last session we learned about structures, and today we are going to learn about simple machines that make our lives easier. Okay, let's see what levers are. Levers are simple machines that make easier to lift a load. Remember, the load is carga. To lift means to put something up. This is in here or on my hand, and I lift it. I put it up, okay? This is easy because this is something light, but imagine that I have to do it with something very, very heavy, and I try to lift it, and it is very difficult. That's when we use levers. Okay, so levers are simple machines that make it easier to lift a load. Let's see what levers are made of. Levers transmit a force thanks to a rigid bar and a point called a pivot or fulcrum. Okay, I have here an example of a rigid bar. This is a rigid bar. I can't bend it even if I try. Okay, remember that rigid is the opposite to flexible. A wire is flexible. I can bend it. Do you see it? I can twist it. Okay, something flexible. But levers are made of rigid bars and one point to support, that is the pivot of the fulcrum. Okay, on your books you are going to see the word pivot, but the most correct is fulcrum. Okay, so you can use both pivot or fulcrum. Remember that force, load, pivot and fulcrum are keywords, so you have to write them on your notepads, on your keywords notepads. Okay, let's continue. Depending on the position of the three elements, the force, the pivot and the load, we can classify levers into three types. Okay, levers class 1, levers class 2 and levers class 3, and we can find them everywhere, as we are going to see now. Okay, so let's start with levers class 1. It is very important that you pay attention to the place where the three elements are. This represents the rigid bar. Okay, this is the rigid bar of the lever. Okay, the triangle represents the pivot or fulcrum. The blue square with the blue arrow represents the load, what I want to lift. Okay, and the red arrow represents the force I apply in the lever to lift the load. Okay, here I've got some examples. For example, the swing lever we can see in the gardens and in the parks when we are playing with other kids. Is it typical that you sit down on one and your classmate or your friend is up? Okay, then the person in here goes down, makes a force down, and you whoop are lifted. Okay, do you understand? Yes, so this girl is making a force down and this boy is going up because this is the load, and you can see here the fulcrum. Next, this boy will make a force down, the fulcrum will help the bar to move, and this girl will go up. Okay, also we have the example of pliers or scissors or cloth pegs. Let's see how they work. Okay, if I have scissors, I have here my fulcrum or pivot, the point where I can't move it. Okay, with my hand I apply a force, so fulcrum or pivot, force, and this is the load. Look, when I apply the force, okay, the load closes. When I apply a force up in the same direction, it opens. The same directions for both, for the force and for the load. Okay, I apply the force and it goes down, and I apply the force up and it opens. Remember, force, fulcrum or pivot, and load. I have here my pliers. It's the same situation. I've got here my fulcrum, the point where the bar, okay, makes it support. This is the force I apply with my hands. I apply a force with my hands. And this is the load. Again, look, when I go with the force up, the load goes up. When I go with the force down, the load goes down. So load, fulcrum, and force. It happens the same with my cloth peg. Okay? If you see here, this is the point where I can get the movement, the pivot or fulcrum. This is the force I apply, and this is the load I want to make up. I want to go up, to lift. I apply the force. This is the reed bar. Apply the force on the fulcrum, and the load goes up. Do you see it? Is that clear? So these three are examples of levers class 1. Okay, a quick review. Force, pivot, and load. The pivot is in the middle between the force and the load. Let's see now what happens with levers class 2. And there is a difference. Here in one extreme, I don't have a force, I've got the pivot. In the middle, I have the load. And on the other extreme, I have the force. But here, they are just the opposite. The load goes down and the force goes up. I have again here 3 examples. A wheelbarrow, a bottle opener, and a nutcracker. Okay, a nutcracker. In the wheelbarrow, it's typical of that. You have the wheel, that is the pivot. You put a load on it, for example, a big bag of something very heavy, sand or rocks. And the 2 levers that are my hands to apply the force and to transport the load. Okay, but again, I've got here a daily life example, my bottle opener. I've got here my bottle and I want to remove the lid, okay? And I have my bottle opener. As you can see, it is a rigid bar. It is a rigid bar. I can't bend it. Okay. This is the point where I'm going to apply the force. As you have in here, okay? The force. Here, I've got the pivot because it's the part is going to move. Do you see it? It's the part where I'm going to move. And here is the part of the load. Okay, this is going to be the load. Okay, I put this, and when I pull, I apply a force up, I pull, okay, the fulcrum will be in here, and I have here the load, and as you can see it, okay, the pivot, the load, and the force. I'm going to repeat it. Okay, the part in here, this part is going to be the fulcrum. Okay, this is the load and this is the force. When I apply the force, I can remove my lid. This is what we call a class 2 lever. Do you want more examples? A nutcracker. I have a nutcracker. As you see here, I've got here the fulcrum or the pivot. I have the force I apply, and in the middle I will put the load. Remember, as you see in here, pivot, load, force. Pivot, load, force. Okay, what happens if I apply a force? Wait a minute. I apply a force in here, and I can open my note. Do you see it? Now it's open. So fulcrum or pivot, load, and force. Okay, the same as in here. Pivot, load, and force. Okay, pivot, load, and force. Pivot, load, and force. I have also an extra example of a daily life product in class 2. This that is used to make little pieces like crumble with nuts or garlic. Again, as you can see, I have a movement. This is the fulcrum or the pivot. This is the point where I put the load. For example, I'm going to take one of the nuts I opened before. This is the nut. I put it on the load. So, fulcrum or pivot, load, and force. If I apply a force on this stream, this is the load and this is the fulcrum. Pivot, load, force. Pivot, load, force. When I apply a force, oh, look what happens. Do you see it now? Can you see the nuts? So, as you can see, levers are very, very useful in our daily life. My hole puncher is the same, class 2. If you see here, I've got a fulcrum that let it move. This part, as you can see here, okay, these are the punchers, and this where I apply the force. So this is the load. Again, pivot, load, force. Pivot, load, force. When I use it, let me find another piece of paper like this. I can make holes. Okay, so my hole puncher is a lever class 2. Okay, if I take class 1, I have force, pivot, and load. Force, pivot, and load. Force, pivot, and load. And this example for my scissors. Force, pivot, and load. Force, pivot, and load. With my pliers, it's the same. Force, pivot, and load. Force, pivot, and load. And finally, let's see levers class number 3. Okay, in this kind of levers, in one extreme you have the pivot or fulcrum. On the other extreme you have the load, and in the middle between the pivot and the load you can find the force. Let's see some examples of class 3 levers. For example, a stapler. If I have a stapler, as you can see here, I've got the fulcrum in here. I've got the load, that is the part where I put the paper, okay, and this, that is the part where I apply the force. If you can see it here, okay, I've got the pivot, the load, and the force, just in the middle, okay. This is a class 3 lever. Again, the pivot, the force, and the load. Okay. Also, I've got these kitchen clamps. Okay, and these are class 3 lever. Again, as you can see in here, I've got here the fulcrum. Okay, this is my reed bar, the fulcrum. I have here the force in the middle, and finally here I have the load. Okay, load, force, and fulcrum. Fulcrum or pivot, force, and load. Okay, if I put it in here, I can see here again. Pivot, pivot, force, and load. Okay? In these tweezers, we have the same situation. I use my tweezers just to remove some hairs from my eyebrows. And again, we have the same example. This is the fulcrum or pivot. Here is where I apply the force. And at the very end, I've got the load. Okay? Pivot, force, and load. Pivot, force, and load. This is my example of class 3. And I have here this staple remover. Again, I've got here my fulcrum or pivot. Do you see it in here? I have my force with my fingers. This is the place where I apply the force. And here I've got the load that I'm going to use to remove the staple. Okay? Fulcrum or pivot, force, and load. Pivot, force, and load. Okay? So, I hope that with these examples you can understand perfectly the 3 kind of levers. So, on lever class 1, force, pivot, and load. On class 2, pivot, load, and force up. And in class 3, pivot, force, and load. Depending on the position of the 3 elements, I have different levers, okay? I have also one example, and is when you are just sweeping the floor, okay? That with your hand, imagine that, well, this is not exactly that, but if I'm sweeping the floor, this is the fulcrum, this is the force, when I'm just sweeping the floor, and the parts down that cleans the floor would be the load, okay? And that's all. So I hope this video is interesting for you. It helps you to understand what you are studying in your books. And you know that if you don't understand something, you always can ask me any question. Okay, bye-bye.